How to build self-esteem in daily life. Self-esteem is one of those ideas that people talk about as if it were a single, solid thing, a measurable quantity that either exists or doesn't. But in truth, self-esteem behaves more like the weather. It fluctuates. Some days the sky of your self-worth is clear and bright. On others, it's overcast with judgment, comparison, and doubt. The goal is not to eliminate those clouds, but to learn how to read them and to keep building habits that help the light come through. To understand self-esteem, we have to start with what it actually is. It's not arrogance, and it's not pretending to love yourself when you don't. At its core, self-esteem is the relationship you have with yourself. It's the way you talk to yourself when no one is listening, the standard by which you measure your actions, and the sense of worth you carry, even when you make mistakes. It's quiet, stable confidence, not the loud kind that seeks applause, but the steady one that allows you to get up and try again after failing. Psychologists describe self-esteem as being made of two major components: competence and worthiness. Competence is about doing your ability to handle life, solve problems, create results. Worthiness is about being the belief that you are valuable simply because you exist, not because of what you produce. People who struggle with low self-esteem often over-invest in competence. They try to earn worth through constant achievement. Others over-invest in worthiness, avoiding challenges because failure would threaten their fragile sense of self. Healthy self-esteem grows where those two meet. The belief that you are worthy and capable. Building the belief starts with awareness, noticing how you currently speak to yourself. Most people's internal dialogue is shockingly cruel. If someone else said the things we say to ourselves, we'd call them abusive. The first step toward healthier self-esteem is to catch that voice in the act. Write down your self-talk for a day. Pay attention to moments when you criticize yourself, missing a deadline, saying something awkward, making a mistake. What are the words you use? I'm so stupid. I'll never get this right. Everyone thinks I'm weird. These phrases are not harmless. They form neural pathways that reinforce shame and fear. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which we discussed in the previous episode, teaches that our thoughts are hypotheses, not facts. The same principle applies here. When you hear your inner critic, pause and question it. Is this thought based on evidence or just habit? Would I speak this way to a friend? Is there another, more compassionate way to interpret this situation? Over time, such questioning weakens the authority of that inner bully and strengthens a kinder, more balanced inner voice. Self-esteem also depends heavily on behavioral evidence. We can't simply think our way into feeling valuable. Our actions must align with that belief. This is where daily life becomes the training ground. Each time you set a boundary, keep a promise, finish a task, or stand up for yourself, you provide your brain with data. I can trust me. Conversely, every time you betray yourself, say yes when you mean no, procrastinate on something meaningful, or neglect self-care, you send the message, my needs don't matter. One of the most effective exercises for rebuilding self-trust is the micro-promise technique. Instead of setting grand, unrealistic goals, make small, achievable commitments and follow through. For example, I'll stretch for 5 minutes in the morning, or I'll tidy one drawer today. The goal isn't the action itself, but the consistency. Each fulfilled promise becomes a brick in the foundation of self-esteem. You're teaching your mind, I do what I say I'll do. Self-esteem also thrives in environments that reflect respect. The people around us act like mirrors, some clean, some distorted. If you surround yourself with chronic critics or emotional vampires, your internal dialogue will absorb their tone. It's not about blaming others, but recognizing the social feedback loops that shape self-perception. Setting boundaries with toxic influences isn't selfish. It's hygiene for the psyche. Body language matters too. Research by Amy Cuddy and others has shown that posture can influence mood and confidence. Standing tall, taking up space, and maintaining steady eye contact signal not only to others but to your own nervous system that you are safe and capable. The body and mind are not separate realms. They form a single feedback loop. When you physically inhabit confidence, your brain follows suit. Gratitude and self-compassion practices also fortify self-esteem. They shift focus from deficiency to sufficiency, from what's missing to what's already present. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you did well or moments when you acted with integrity. This isn't about ego inflation but balanced self-recognition. Over time, such reflection teaches your brain to register positive feedback instead of filtering it out. Another hidden enemy of self-esteem is comparison. Social media has turned comparison into a reflex. We measure our private struggles against other people's highlight reels, forgetting that what we see is curated. When you catch yourself comparing, pause and ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Often, it's a story of lack that someone else's success invalidates your worth. But another person's light doesn't dim yours. Their timeline is not your timetable. Reframing comparison into inspiration, if they can do it. Maybe I can too transforms envy into motivation. Perfectionism is another saboteur. Many people believe they must be flawless to be worthy of respect. But perfectionism is not about high standards. It's about fear. It's the avoidance of shame disguised as ambition. The antidote is embracing imperfection as part of growth. Instead of asking, was it perfect? Ask, was it honest? Perfection seeks control. Honesty seeks connection. Self-esteem grows in action, not in rumination. You cannot wait until you feel confident to start living. Confidence emerges from doing. Psychologist Albert Bandura called this self-efficacy, the belief in your ability to influence outcomes. Each time you act despite fear, you expand your sense of possibility. Start with small risks. Share an opinion. Try a new skill. Introduce yourself to someone. Action teaches the brain that fear isn't fatal and that courage is a muscle. Forgiveness, both of oneself and others, plays a crucial role as well. Carrying guilt or resentment corrodes self-esteem because it traps you in the past. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean excusing mistakes. It means releasing the belief that you are permanently defined by them. Ask, what can this teach me? Rather than, what does this say about me? Learning transforms shame into wisdom. Self-esteem is not built in isolation. Human beings are wired for connection. Healthy relationships act as external scaffolding while we strengthen our internal structure. A kind word, a hug, a shared laugh, these are not luxuries but neurochemical nourishment. Oxytocin and serotonin, the brain's bonding and mood-regulating chemicals, literally help rebuild the emotional circuits damaged by chronic self-criticism. Allowing yourself to receive care is an act of courage. It's also worth acknowledging that cultural messages shape our self-esteem more than we realize. Many societies tie worth to productivity, beauty, or success. Rejecting these scripts requires conscious effort. You are not a brand. You are a person. The goal is not to become the best version of yourself, a phrase that often masks self-rejection, but to become at peace with yourself. That peace comes from aligning values, actions, and self-talk. In daily life, building self-esteem looks deceptively ordinary. It's in saying no without over-explaining. It's in giving yourself credit for effort, not just results. It's in standing in front of the mirror and noticing not the flaws but the endurance written in your reflection. It's in remembering that growth rarely feels graceful. Like physical exercise, strengthening self-esteem often involves discomfort, soreness, and repetition. But those sensations are signs of rebuilding, not breaking. The journey toward healthy self-esteem is less about becoming someone new and more about remembering who you were before shame told you otherwise. It's rediscovering the quiet confidence that children have before the world teaches them comparison. Each day you practice awareness, compassion, and integrity. You reclaim another piece of that original self, the one who already knew they were enough. The practice of self-respect and everyday confident self-esteem grows not from grand revelations, but from small, consistent acts of self-respect. The quiet choices you make when no one is watching determine how much you value yourself. Confidence is rarely an explosion. It's more like the steady warmth of a candle that never goes out because you keep tending to it. To cultivate this kind of inner stability, you first need to understand the difference between self-esteem and external validation. External validation feels intoxicating. When someone praises you, likes your post, or compliments your work, it releases dopamine, a rush of reward that temporarily fills the void. But like sugar, it fades quickly, leaving you craving more. Self-esteem, on the other hand, is metabolic. It sustains you. It comes from within and doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. This doesn't mean you should reject praise or affection. It means you must learn to metabolize them differently. Instead of using them as proof of your worth, accept them as pleasant confirmations of what you already know. When someone says, "You did great," try thinking, "Yes, that matches how I felt about my effort." If they don't say it, your worth doesn't change. You can still tell yourself, "I did something meaningful today." A key exercise for internal validation is the self-acknowledgement journal. Each evening, write down one thing you respect yourself for, not something you achieved, but something that reflects integrity. I told the truth even though it was uncomfortable. I took a break instead of pushing to exhaustion. I forgave myself for a mistake. These statements rewire your focus from achievement to alignment. Over time, you start to view yourself as someone who deserves kindness because your actions consistently reflect it. Boundaries are another core pillar of self-esteem. Every time you set a healthy boundary, you communicate to your subconscious. I matter. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks. They allow connection while protecting your emotional home. People with low self-esteem often fear that setting limits will make them seem selfish or unkind. But boundaries are not punishments. They're guidelines for mutual respect. One effective boundary building technique is the pause and assess rule. When someone asks for your time, help, or emotional labor, don't answer immediately. Say, let me think about that. This short pause gives your nervous system time to check in. Do I have the energy? Do I genuinely want to do this? Does it align with my priorities? Learning to say no without guilt is like lifting emotional weights. It strengthens your sense of autonomy with every repetition. Another powerful boundary is with your own perfectionism. Many people mistake relentless self-improvement for self-respect, but constantly fixing yourself implies you're broken. Real self-respect includes rest, imperfection, and humor. You can strive for excellence while accepting that mistakes are part of mastery. A musician doesn't hate their wrong notes. They use them to adjust tune and timing. In life, errors perform the same function: feedback, not failure. A practice I often recommend is the mirror rule. Stand in front of a mirror once a day and make direct eye contact with yourself. Not to recite forced affirmations or to criticize your appearance, but to acknowledge your humanity. You might simply say, "I see you." It sounds trivial, even awkward at first, but this small ritual rebuilds connection with the self. Eye contact releases oxytocin, even when it's with your reflection. It tells the brain, this person is safe, this person matters. Self-esteem is not about always feeling good about yourself. It's about being kind to yourself when you don't. This distinction changes everything. If you only respect yourself on good days, your confidence will collapse under stress. But if you can say, "I still have worth," even while struggling, you build a form of self-esteem that endures chaos. This mindset extends into physical care. The body and mind are in constant conversation. Ignoring physical needs, sleep, nutrition, movement is a form of self-neglect that communicates unworthiness. You can't think your way to self-esteem while treating your body like a disposable vehicle. Movement is especially powerful. Exercise doesn't just improve appearance or health. It reinforces agency. Each step, stretch, or lift is a physical declaration. I'm capable. Sleep is another underrated factor. Chronic sleep deprivation amplifies self-criticism and emotional reactivity. You're more likely to believe negative thoughts when you're tired because your brain loses regulatory control. Prioritizing rest is not laziness. It's maintenance for the mind that builds your life. Language also matters. The words you use to describe yourself shape neural pathways that form identity. Replace global statements like "I'm a failure" with situational ones. "I failed at this task, but I'm learning." Swap "I'm not good enough" for "I'm growing." It sounds simplistic, but neuroplasticity thrives on repetition. The more often you use compassionate language, the more natural it becomes. Social comparison often sneaks back in, even when you think you've outgrown it. To counter it, practice perspective taking. When jealousy arises, ask, what might this person's hidden struggles be? No one's life is free from pain. Realizing that every human being is a mix of triumphs and fears levels the playing field of empathy. It transforms envy into understanding. Self-esteem also deepens when you act in accordance with your values. Many people know what they believe in, but rarely translate those beliefs into behavior. If honesty matters to you, practice telling uncomfortable truths kindly. If compassion matters, practice it toward people who annoy you. Living your values generates what psychologists call self-congruence, the alignment between what you believe and what you do. This alignment creates peace, and peace fuels confidence. An often overlooked aspect of self-esteem is creativity. Creative expression, whether painting, writing, gardening, or problem-solving, activates the brain's reward system while bypassing judgment. The process becomes a conversation with yourself. What do I think? What do I feel? What can I create? The result matters less than the expression. When you make something, you prove to yourself that your inner world has value worth sharing. To strengthen this, treat creativity as play, not performance.
Adults often lose the ability to play freely because they fear looking foolish.
But play is the laboratory of confidence. When you allow yourself to experiment, fail, and laugh, you rebuild the natural self-esteem that children possess, not based on achievement, but on curiosity. Humor itself is a hidden indicator of self-esteem.
People comfortable in their skin can laugh at their own imperfections without self-hatred.
Humor dissolves shame.
The ability to see the absurdity in your own struggles doesn't minimize them.
It gives you power over them. You are no longer defined by your pain, but by your perspective on it. Relationships offer one of the best mirrors for self-worth. If you find yourself drawn repeatedly to people who treat you poorly, it's often because some part of you agrees with their low assessment. Therapy helps break this pattern by exposing those subconscious agreements. Ask yourself, what do I believe about the kind of love I deserve? Healthy self-esteem sets the standard. It says, I will not negotiate my dignity. Sometimes, self-esteem means walking away from jobs, friendships, or relationships that consistently erode your peace. It's not about holding grudges, but about choosing environments that reflect your growth. The soil must match the seed. If you want to bloom, don't keep planting yourself where sunlight can't reach. Forging self-esteem also requires tolerating discomfort. Confidence isn't built by avoiding fear, but by coexisting with it. Every time you do something uncomfortable and survive, you teach your nervous system resilience. Public speaking, asserting boundaries, trying something new. Each experience tells your body, I can handle this. Meditation and mindfulness complement this growth beautifully. Observing your thoughts without judgment trains you to see that self-criticism is just another mental event, not a prophecy. Over time, mindfulness creates a gap between thought and identity. You stop fusing with your inner critic and start witnessing it like a passing cloud. That distance is freedom. Another practical technique is the CBT sandwich. When facing a negative self-belief, place it between two rational thoughts.
For example, I'm nervous about this presentation, negative, but I've prepared thoroughly, rational, and I can handle imperfection, rational.
This technique keeps the mind balanced and prevents spiraling into catastrophic thinking. Self-esteem also grows through contribution. Doing something meaningful for others, mentoring, volunteering, supporting a cause reminds you that your existence matters beyond your internal narrative. Helping others is not about martyrdom. It's about reconnecting with purpose.
Humans are wired to find self-worth through connection and usefulness. Finally, celebrate progress quietly.
You don't need to broadcast your growth.
True confidence often moves in silence.
Notice the subtle shifts: the moment you spoke up, the time you didn't overthink, the day you rested without guilt.
These micro-victories accumulate, forming the architecture of self-esteem. You don't wake up one morning with perfect self-worth. You cultivate it like a garden. Some days it rains, some days weeds appear, but if you keep tending to it, feeding it with honesty, compassion, and consistency, it grows. Eventually, you look back and realize that confidence wasn't something you found. It was something you built, one small act of self-respect at a time. Low self-esteem doesn't appear out of nowhere. It has roots. To rebuild confidence, you must understand where those roots began and how they continue to influence the present. Self-esteem issues are rarely about who you are now. They're about outdated beliefs you inherited when you were too young to question them. Healing self-esteem, therefore, is not self-improvement. It's self-correction. Many of our earliest lessons about worth come from childhood. If love and approval were conditional based on performance, obedience, or perfection, we internalized the message, I must earn acceptance. That belief quietly dictates adult life. You may find yourself working harder than everyone else, fearing failure like it's fatal, or tolerating mistreatment because deep down you still think, I have to prove I'm good enough. These are echoes of a childhood script that no longer fits your adult reality. The first step in healing this script is recognition. Ask yourself, whose voice am I hearing when I criticize myself? Often, it's not your own.
It's a teacher, parent, sibling, or social system that equated value with performance. Once you identify the source, you can begin to talk back. Imagine your adult self wise, compassionate, capable, sitting beside your younger self. What would you say to them now?
Probably something kinder than what you still tell yourself. Psychologists call this reparenting. It's the process of giving yourself the emotional care you didn't receive when you needed it most.
Reparenting doesn't mean blaming your family.
It means acknowledging that your needs were real, even if they weren't met.
You can't rewrite the past, but you can update the emotional program.
When you make mistakes today and instinctively scold yourself,
try responding as a supportive parent would. That's okay. Let's learn from it. Each time you do,
you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one. Another major source of low self-esteem is comparison, not just with others, but with imaginary versions of ourselves.
many people carry an internal, ideal self who always does everything right, looks flawless, never hesitates, and never feels afraid.
Every time reality fails to match that fantasy, self-esteem plummets. The problem isn't that you're failing, it's that the standard is inhuman. The ideal self isn't a goal, it's a ghost. To dismantle it, you must define success in human terms. Replace perfect with progress. Replace never fail with learn quickly. Replace always confident with courageous despite fear. Confidence built on perfection is brittle. Confidence built on honesty is unbreakable. Trauma also plays a powerful role.
People who experience neglect, abuse, or chronic criticism often develop a kind of emotional scar tissue that distorts self-perception.
The nervous system adapts by expecting rejection, scanning constantly for danger, and interpreting neutrality as threat.
Healing in such cases requires patience and often professional support. Therapy, particularly approaches like trauma-focused CBT or EMDR, helps the brain reprocess old memories and teaches it that the present is safe. If trauma shaped your sense of worth, healing begins with safety. Before you can believe, I am valuable, your body must believe, I am safe. Start by creating small moments of physical and emotional calm, deep breathing,
grounding through the senses, spending time with gentle people or in quiet nature. Safety is the soil in which self-esteem grows. Without it, affirmations are like seeds scattered on stone. Forgiving the past is another act of self-liberation. This doesn't mean excusing harm.
It means choosing not to carry it anymore. When you cling to resentment, you remain bound to the event that caused it. Letting go is not saying, it didn't matter, it's saying, I matter more. Cultural conditioning also fuels low self-esteem.
Modern societies often reward overwork, appearance, and status, creating a baseline of collective inadequacy.
Advertising thrives on insecurity. It whispers, you're not enough, but you could be if you buy this. Breaking that spell requires awareness.
Each time you consume media, ask, what emotion is this trying to sell me? Then consciously reject the transaction. Your worth is not a marketing strategy. Social comparison has become nearly unavoidable in the digital age.
Platforms designed to connect us often erode our self-perception. You scroll through curated snapshots of people's highlight reels and forget that real life includes outtakes.
The antidote is digital hygiene. Limit screen time, unfollow accounts that trigger envy, and intentionally consume content that inspires rather than diminishes. Remember, your nervous system was not built for constant exposure to 1,000 perfect lives per day. One exercise to counter comparison is called reverse empathy. When jealousy arises, imagine the person you envy sitting across from you in a moment of private struggle. See them anxious before sleep, doubting themselves, or facing rejection.
Everyone, even the confident ones, feels inadequate sometimes.
This realization humanizes success and softens envy into compassion. Low self-esteem also thrives on cognitive distortions, those thinking traps that warp reality.
Common examples include all or nothing thinking. If I'm not perfect,
I'm worthless. Mind reading, they think I'm boring.
And discounting the positive, that compliment doesn't count. Challenging these distortions isn't about false positivity.
It's about accuracy.
Ask, what's the evidence for this belief? Have I ever been wrong about this before?
Or what would I tell a friend in this situation? Over time, truth becomes your default language. Another crucial step is disentangling guilt from shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt can guide moral growth. Shame immobilizes.
People with low self-esteem live in chronic shame, believing their flaws define them. To counter this, separate behavior from identity.
When you make a mistake, say, I acted poorly, not I am terrible. This linguistic shift rewires self-concept. Healing self-esteem also involves reconnecting with your authentic self, the part of you that existed before conditioning. Ask, what brings me genuine joy, not just approval? Many adults lose touch with their passions because they learned early that pleasure was secondary to productivity. Reclaiming play, curiosity, and creativity is not indulgent. It's restorative. Your inner child isn't a weakness, it's your original source of vitality. Grieving lost time is part of this process.
When you realize how long you've lived under self-criticism, sadness naturally arises. Let it.
Mourning the year spent doubting yourself is not self-pity. It's emotional honesty. The tears wash away old shame. From that space, gratitude can emerge, gratitude that you are awake to it now, that you have time to rebuild.
Healing is never late. To deepen the healing, practice the reframe ritual. When a self-critical thought arises, pause and restate it through compassion.
For instance, I'm so lazy becomes I'm tired and need rest. I always fail becomes I'm still learning. No one likes me becomes I crave connection. This shift doesn't deny pain.
It decodes it.
Every negative thought hides a need. When you meet the need instead of attacking yourself for having it, self-esteem naturally strengthens. Relationships often mirror our internal beliefs. If you struggle with self-worth, you might gravitate toward partners or friends who confirm that belief through neglect or control.
Healing means choosing differently, surrounding yourself with people who see your value even when you forget it. Let their reflection teach your nervous system a new normal. Being treated well, self-esteem repair also requires behavioral courage.
You cannot think your way out of low self-worth. You must behave your way into confidence. Start small. Speak up in meetings.
Express opinions.
Accept compliments without deflection.
Each act of self-assertion trains the brain to expect respect.
It's like exposure therapy for the soul. Repeated doses of dignity. Therapy accelerates this process by providing both mirror and mentor.
A good therapist doesn't give you self-esteem. They help you see the part of you that already has it. Through dialogue, reflection, and gentle challenge, you begin to internalize their compassionate perspective. Eventually, the therapist's voice fades, and your own voice of self-respect takes its place. Self-esteem healing is also biological. When you replace self-criticism with self-kindness, your brain chemistry changes.
The prefrontal cortex, responsible for empathy and rationality, becomes more active, while the amygdala, the alarm center of fear and shame, calms down.
You literally think and feel differently. It's not just philosophy.
It's neuroplasticity. Rituals of grounding reinforce this healing. Journaling, mindful walks, meditation, even deep breathing send signals of safety to your nervous system. Over time, those signals become your baseline. You stop existing in survival mode and start living in self-trust.
Finally, remember that self-esteem is not a destination. It's a relationship. Like any relationship, it requires honesty, patience, and maintenance.
There will be relapses, days when old voices return, when you forget your progress.
But each time you notice and realign, you're proving something profound, that you're willing to keep showing up for yourself.
And that, more than perfection, is the true foundation of lasting self-worth. Awareness is the first step to change, but action is what transforms it into identity.
Knowing that you deserve respect is an insight. Behaving as though you do is evidence.
Self-esteem doesn't grow from theory, it grows from repetition. The mind learns worthiness the same way it learns any other skill. Through practice, feedback, and time, the simplest foundation for daily self-esteem is consistency.
When your days include repeated actions that honor your values, your brain begins to predict self-respect as a default.
Think of habits as a language. Every choice you make, how you wake up, what you eat, how you speak to yourself, communicates something about who you believe you are. Consistent act of self-care. Say, I am someone worth taking care of. Neglect says,
I don't matter. The difference between those two sentences shapes your life. Start with routines that anchor your day in agency.
For example, morning rituals can be a quiet revolution against self-doubt. Make your bed not to impress anyone, but to remind your brain that order is possible. Drink water before reaching for your phone, to signal that your needs come before digital noise.
These tiny moments are not trivial. They are symbolic cues that say, my actions create meaning. The practice of mindfulness turns ordinary habits into rituals of presence.
When brushing your teeth, walking, or drinking coffee, focus fully on the experience.
Feel the sensations, smell the aroma, notice your breathing. These micro moments of awareness build a sense of groundedness. Low self-esteem thrives on disconnection, being lost in regrets of the past or fears of the future.
Mindfulness reclaims the present as proof of existence. I'm here, and I'm enough. Another cornerstone habit is keeping promises to yourself.
Self-esteem and self-trust are twins.
If you constantly break promises, your mind learns not to believe you.
But every time you follow through, even on something small, you send your nervous system a signal of reliability. Use what I call the one rule.
Instead of demanding huge changes, aim for small improvements that are easy to sustain.
A single page read, a 10-minute walk, one email sent. The reward is not the outcome, but the repetition. Confidence compounds like interest. Language remains a powerful daily tool.
Replace harsh internal labels with descriptive statements.
Instead of "I'm lazy," try "I feel unmotivated right now." That subtle shift turns judgment into observation, which invites curiosity rather than shame. Over time, this kind of compassionate precision rewires your thinking. The brain, being literal, takes your words as instructions. Speak to yourself like a leader coaching a capable team, not a tyrant orating a failure. Writing can amplify this transformation. Morning journaling, especially stream of consciousness writing, helps unload the mental clutter that feeds insecurity. When thoughts leave your head and land on paper, they lose their authority. You can analyze them, challenge them, or simply let them go. Journaling also tracks growth. You start to see patterns, recurring fears, and the slow emergence of confidence. Self-knowledge becomes self-respect. Gratitude journaling complements this practice beautifully.
Listing 3 things you appreciate about yourself or your day each evening trains your brain to notice sufficiency instead of lack.
It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about balancing the emotional equation. The mind naturally focuses on threats. It's an evolutionary bias, but gratitude teaches it to register safety and joy. Over time, this reprogramming shifts your emotional baseline towards self-assurance. Body awareness deepens this work. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Chronic tension, shallow breathing, hunch posture, all are silent expressions of self-doubt.
Somatic mindfulness invites you to notice how emotions inhabit your body.
When shame arises, where do you feel it? Maybe your chest tightens or your stomach knots.
Instead of resisting the sensation, breathe into it.
Say internally, "It's okay for this to be here." This act of acceptance releases physical armor and communicates safety to the nervous system. Movement practices like yoga, tai chi, or even stretching in silence reconnect body and mind. These are not workouts, they're negotiations with yourself. Each posture or breath says, "I belong in this body." That statement, repeated daily, undoes years of disembodiment caused by shame or neglect. Nutrition, too, plays a subtle but powerful role.
When you feed yourself nourishing food with awareness, you're sending a message of care. Emotional eating, restrictive diets, or constant guilt around food often mask deeper beliefs of unworthiness.
Instead of chasing perfection, aim for partnership. Eat to support your energy, mood, and vitality. Self-esteem is metabolized, not just mentally, but physically. Another habit that builds worth is celebrating effort, not just results. At the end of the day, instead of asking, "What did I achieve?" ask, "What did I try?" Self-esteem flourishes in environments where effort is valued because it removes fear of failure. Each attempt becomes evidence of courage. This mindset converts everyday life into a training ground for confidence taught in relationships. Daily self-esteem shows up through boundaries, honesty, and reciprocity. Speak up when something bothers you, even gently. Avoid apologizing for existing or for having needs. Notice the impulse to over-explain. Behind it often lies the fear of disapproval.
Replace it with calm assertion. This doesn't work for me. Respecting your needs doesn't alienate healthy people.
It filters them in. The ones worth keeping will adapt. Listening to your emotions is another habit of self-respect. Feelings are not problems to solve. They are data to interpret. Anger might mean a boundary was crossed. Sadness might mean I need rest or connection. Anxiety might mean something feels uncertain. Responding to emotions as information rather than as moral verdicts transforms emotional chaos into guidance. The more fluently you read your emotions, the more effectively you can advocate for yourself. Reflection at the end of each day closes the feedback loop of growth.
Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do today that aligned with my values?
What challenged my self-esteem, and how did I respond?
What will I do differently tomorrow with kindness, not criticism?
This simple practice replaces vague guilt with constructive awareness. Sleep routines reinforce all of this. Rest is self-respect in its purest form. When you prioritize sleep, you're saying, "My mind and body deserve care." People with low self-esteem often push rest aside, believing productivity equals worth. But rest is not the opposite of progress. It's the foundation of it. A rested brain is more resilient, creative,
and emotionally stable. Beyond habits, the environment you inhabit shapes how you feel about yourself. Curate your surroundings intentionally. Keep your space clean, not out of perfectionism, but as an act of love. Surround yourself with objects that reflect your story, books that inspire, art that soothes, reminders of what you've survived. Your space should whisper back to you, "You belong here." Digital environments deserve the same curation. Unsubscribe from content that drains your energy or reinforces inadequacy. Replace doom scrolling with mindful consumption. Listen to uplifting podcasts. Follow creators who educate or inspire. And take digital Sabbaths where screens stay off. Silence is not emptiness. It's restoration. Social support remains a daily nutrient for self-esteem. Reach out, not just when you're struggling, but to share appreciation or humor. Genuine connection reminds you that you exist in a web of mutual care. Loneliness, though common, distorts perception. It convinces you that you're invisible. But connection reaffirms your place in the human circle. Even brief interactions, a smile at a cashier, a thank you email, send microbursts of oxytocin that recalibrate self-worth. Another transformative practice is self-dialogue. Speak out loud to yourself kindly. It might feel awkward, but hearing your voice say, "You're doing your best," carries far more weight than thinking it silently. Sound engages the auditory system and reinforces belief. This is why affirmations can be powerful when personalized and sincere. I'm learning. I'm growing. I don't have to earn my place. The goal isn't to convince yourself of perfection, but to normalize compassion. Humor continues to be an underrated healing force. Laughing at your humanity restores perspective. When you can chuckle at a mistake instead of spiraling into shame, you reclaim control from the inner critic. Humor says, "I'm still worthy even when I'm ridiculous." That lightness prevents the seriousness of self-improvement from hardening into pressure. Learning is another quiet builder of confidence. Curiosity expands self-esteem because it shifts focus from evaluation to exploration. Take a class, read about a new topic, learn a skill unrelated to your work. The process of learning reminds you that you are adaptable and capable. Even struggling with a new language or instrument reinforces the message, "I can grow." Growth and worth are inseparable. Service, too, nourishes self-worth. Doing something kind without expectation of return reminds you that you have value to offer. Acts of service don't need to be grand. Holding a door, listening fully, or sending a message of encouragement counts. Contribution contradicts the lie of inadequacy. It says, "I have something meaningful to give." Lastly, remember that daily self-esteem is not about rigid discipline, but compassionate structure. If you miss a day or revert to old patterns, respond gently. The moment you notice the lapse and resume your practice, you're succeeding. The true metric of self-esteem is not perfection, it's persistence. Each small act of respect, getting enough sleep, breathing deeply, saying no, journaling, or smiling at your reflection accumulates into quiet confidence. Over time, these micro-choices form a self-image that no external opinion can shake. You start to believe not because you were convinced, but because you've lived it, day after day. Building self-esteem is one thing. Sustaining it through the storms of life is another. Confidence doesn't disappear overnight, it erodes slowly, like water wearing down stone, through neglect, criticism, and the quiet return of old habits. The art of maintaining self-worth lies in protecting it from corrosion, while continuing to nourish it with truth, kindness, and resilience. The first step in sustaining self-esteem is to stop treating it as a destination. Confidence is not a state you reach and then keep forever. It's a living system that requires maintenance. Think of it as emotional fitness. You don't expect one workout to keep you strong for life. You exercise regularly, rest intentionally, and adjust your routine as your body changes. The same applies to your psychological strength. Some days you will feel powerful, others fragile. The difference between those who thrive and those who collapse isn't the absence of fragility, it's the commitment to self-care even when fragile. Maintenance begins with emotional regulation. Self-esteem fluctuates naturally with circumstances, but when emotions swing too far, old patterns resurface. Learning to regulate emotions prevents temporary setbacks from spiraling into identity crises. Mindfulness helps, but so does something simpler. Naming what you feel. I'm disappointed. I'm anxious. I feel unseen. Labeling emotions activates the prefrontal cortex, quiets the amygdala, and restores perspective. Emotional clarity is confidence in disguise. It reminds you that feelings are experiences, not verdicts. Criticism is one of the most common triggers for collapsing self-worth. The mind interprets disapproval as danger because, in our evolutionary past, rejection meant isolation. But not all criticism is equal. To protect your self-esteem, you must learn to filter it. Imagine every piece of feedback passing through 3 questions. Is it true? If yes, use it for growth. Is it kind? If yes, it deserves reflection. Is it useful? If yes, apply it and move on. If it fails all 3, release it. Not all opinions are worth hosting in your mind. There's a psychological technique called cognitive diffusion, the practice of separating yourself from your thoughts. When self-critical ideas arise, imagine them as words printed on a passing cloud or floating leaf. Watch them drift by without attachment. The goal isn't to fight the thought, but to deny it authority. You are not your inner commentary. You are the observer behind it. Another essential practice is learning to recover from failure without self-condemnation. Failure is inevitable, but how you interpret it determines its impact. People with fragile self-esteem equate mistakes with identity. I failed, therefore I'm a failure. Those with healthy self-esteem translate it differently. I failed, therefore I'm learning. The shift may seem semantic, but neurologically, it's transformative. Reframing failure rewires brain pathways from shame to adaptation. Develop a recovery script for setbacks. When something goes wrong, an argument, a rejection, a missed goal, say to yourself, this is temporary, and I've handled worse. Then ask, what can this teach me? Reflection turns pain into information. Over time, your self-esteem becomes anti-fragile. Each challenge strengthens rather than weakens it. The company you keep continues to shape your inner landscape. Supportive relationships act as emotional scaffolding during difficult periods. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your strengths when you forget them. Choose those who challenge you kindly, not cruelly. Distance from toxic environments is not avoidance, it's protection of your mental soil. If someone repeatedly undermines your confidence, ask yourself, why am I giving this person front row access to my life? Self-respect sometimes means editing your guest list. Protecting self-esteem also requires managing comparison. You can't eliminate comparison entirely. Human brains are wired for it, but you can reframe it. When you notice envy, pause and shift perspective. This person shows what's possible. Let others' success expand your imagination instead of shrinking your worth. Admiration is envy purified by self-trust. Long-term confidence depends on the narratives you tell about yourself. Your self-esteem is essentially a story, one you edit daily. If that story is full of shame and limitation, rewrite it consciously. Replace I'm the one who always struggles with I'm the one who keeps showing up. Replace I'm broken with I'm rebuilding. The human brain organizes experience through narrative. Changing the story changes the identity. Reflection rituals strengthen this rewriting process. Once a week, take 15 minutes to review the past 7 days. Ask, what did I handle well? What challenged me? And how did I respond? What am I proud of that no one else saw? This quiet inventory builds emotional evidence of competence and worth. Without reflection, progress becomes invisible, and invisible progress breeds discouragement. Another long-term strategy is curiosity. When self-esteem dips, most people ask, what's wrong with me? That question anchors you in shame. Instead, ask, what's happening within me? Curiosity is the antidote to self-judgment. It transforms self-examination from accusation to exploration. You shift from courtroom to laboratory, from guilt to learning. A major test of self-esteem occurs in relationships. Love can either amplify or distort your sense of worth. In healthy dynamics, you feel free to be imperfect without fear of abandonment. In unhealthy ones, love becomes conditional, forcing you to perform for acceptance. Maintaining self-esteem in love means refusing to outsource validation. Your partner can appreciate you, but they cannot define you. The moment you make someone else the keeper of your worth, you surrender control of your peace. Conflict, too, becomes a mirror of self-worth. When you argue, are you trying to be right or to be respected? The former feeds ego. The latter nurtures dignity. You can disagree with calm conviction when you no longer need every conversation to confirm your value. True confidence is quiet because it doesn't seek dominance, it seeks understanding. Sustained self-esteem also relies on boundaries with your past. Regret is one of the most corrosive forces against confidence. It keeps you fighting battles already lost. To protect yourself, practice what I call active forgiveness. It's not passive acceptance, but deliberate release.
Write letters you never sent, acknowledge pain, take responsibility, and then physically let it go. Tear the paper, burn it, bury it. Ritual turns forgiveness from concept to embodiment. Purpose is the next pillar.
When your life orbits around a purpose larger than ego, family, creativity, service, learning, self-esteem becomes resilient.
Purpose acts like gravity.
It holds your identity steady even when emotions fluctuate. Ask regularly, what matters most to me right now? Adjust your focus as life evolves.
Purpose doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be genuine. Spirituality, whether religious or secular, also reinforces self-esteem.
Seeing yourself as part of something greater, nature, humanity, consciousness dilutes self-obsession and situates personal flaws in a larger context. You become less concerned with perfection and more attuned to participation.
You stop asking, am I enough?
And start asking, how can I contribute?
To sustain confidence, you must also learn to rest in uncertainty.
Life will constantly test your sense of worth with unpredictability, job loss, illness, rejection, failure.
The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to anchor beneath it. When the surface of life is chaotic, remember that self-worth lies deeper than circumstance. Say to yourself, I can't control this outcome, but I can control my response. That sentence alone stabilizes the psyche. Another essential habit is lifelong learning.
Stagnation erodes confidence.
The mind equates growth with safety because learning signals adaptability.
When you stop learning, you unconsciously tell yourself, I've peaked, which breeds anxiety.
Read, experiment, explore new perspectives, not to prove intelligence, but to remind yourself of capacity. Joy is maintenance too. Many people treat joy as a reward for productivity, but it's actually a fuel.
Laughter, play, music, art, these aren't distractions. They're psychological vitamins. Prioritize moments that make you feel alive. They recharge the emotional battery that self-esteem runs on. Gratitude continues to anchor confidence over time.
But mature gratitude is more than listing blessings.
It's perspective. It's being thankful not just for comfort but for challenge, because each challenge proved your resilience.
When you can look back on hardship and say, that shaped me, self-esteem transforms into wisdom.
Perhaps the deepest layer of sustaining self-worth is self-trust.
Trust is built through consistency, doing what you say you'll do, honoring commitments and telling yourself the truth even when it's uncomfortable.
Integrity is self-esteem's immune system. It defends against guilt and shame because you know, regardless of outcome, that you acted honestly. At times, maintenance means pruning.
Growth isn't always about addition, it's about subtraction. Let go of outdated goals, toxic expectations, and identities that no longer fit. Every time you release what no longer serves you, you create space for authenticity. The phrase, I used to think I needed that, is a quiet anthem of maturity. Finally, remember that self-esteem matures into serenity. It stops needing to prove, perform, or persuade. It settles into a quiet confidence rooted in truth. That worth is inherent, not conditional. Life still brings storms, but instead of breaking you, they reveal your strength. In the end, sustaining self-esteem is not about never falling again.
It's about knowing you can rise every time, a little wiser, a little gentler,
and a little more certain that who you are is, and always has been, enough. There comes a point in every journey of self-worth when the question changes.
It's no longer, how do I feel better about myself?
But how do I live from the truth that I already am enough? This transition from constructing confidence to embodying it is the essence of emotional maturity. Self-esteem, when integrated, stops being a conscious effort and becomes a way of being. Most people spend their lives trying to earn self-respect through achievement, approval, or appearance. They build confidence like a castle made of sand, impressive but fragile, collapsing under the next wave of criticism or rejection.
True self-esteem doesn't depend on applause.
It thrives in silence.
It's the kind of confidence that doesn't announce itself, because it doesn't need to. Living with self-esteem means you no longer negotiate your worth.
You stop begging for validation in conversations, stop over-explaining your choices, stop performing for acceptance.
You move from proving to simply being.
The irony is that when you stop chasing approval, people respect you more because authenticity radiates calm authority. It's the power of someone who knows who they are and no longer asked for permission to exist. This kind of inner stability creates space for generosity. When you feel secure in your own value, you no longer fear that someone else's success diminishes yours.
You can celebrate others without comparison, offer kindness without calculation, and give without resentment. Confidence makes compassion sustainable, because you are no longer running on emotional debt. Another mark of mature self-esteem is humility. Not the self-deprecating kind that denies your strengths, but the quiet recognition that you are both remarkable and human. Arrogance says, I am better than others. Low self-esteem says, I'm worse. True humility says, I'm equal no more, no less.
It's a balance between dignity and openness, strength and softness. You begin to see that self-esteem is not about thinking highly of yourself, but thinking truthfully.
It's about accurate self-perception.
You see your strengths without exaggeration, your flaws without condemnation. You hold both in the same compassionate awareness, understanding that worth and imperfection can coexist. Confidence becomes less about loud affirmations and more about quiet decisions. You start saying no without guilt, yes without fear, and stop apologizing for existing. Boundaries become acts of love, not rebellion.
You stop shrinking to make others comfortable or inflating to feel visible. You live at your natural size. One of the most liberating shifts in this stage is emotional detachment, not coldness, but clarity.
You no longer interpret every disagreement as rejection or every failure as catastrophe. You begin to trust that your value remains intact regardless of circumstance. That detachment allows for deeper connection because you no longer cling.
You choose. People with sustained self-esteem carry a specific kind of calm.
They move slower, listen deeper, and speak less to be understood and more to understand.
Their presence feels safe because they are at peace with themselves. You can sense when someone has done the internal work. Their energy doesn't demand anything from you. To life from self-esteem also means living from purpose, not pressure. You shift from I have to I choose to. Work becomes expression, not validation. Love becomes partnership, not dependency. Even solitude becomes sacred instead of scary.
You realize that being alone is not the same as being lonely. It's the space where you recharge your sense of self. In everyday life.
Self-esteem manifests subtly, in the way you speak to yourself when no one hears. In how you treat the waiter. Not just your boss. In whether you honor promises made to yourself. In your ability to rest without guilt. These small acts are the architecture of dignity.
They reinforce, moment by moment, the belief that you are worthy of respect, especially your own. Self-esteem reshapes your relationship with time.
You stop rushing to prove your productivity and start valuing presence over pace. You learn that slowing down doesn't mean falling behind. It means aligning with yourself. When your worth is no longer tethered to output, you rediscover creativity, curiosity, and peace. It also transforms how you face endings. Whether it's the end of a relationship, a job, or a chapter of life, you stop interpreting endings as evidence of inadequacy. Instead, you view them as transitions, necessary pruning that makes space for growth. You learn to grieve without losing yourself, to let go without collapsing. Confidence built on truth survives loss because it's anchored in something untouchable, your inherent value. You are not your achievements, relationships, or failures.
You are the awareness that experiences them all.
When you live from that place, nothing external can truly take your worth away. Sustaining self-esteem also requires embracing paradox.
You can be confident and uncertain, strong and scared, grateful and grieving all at once. Mature self-worth doesn't demand constant positivity. It allows complexity. You realize that wholeness is not perfection, but integration. There will still be days when you feel small, insecure, or invisible. That's not regression, it's humanity.
The difference now is that you no longer panic when those feelings arise. You witness them, comfort them, and let them pass.
Emotional maturity is not the absence of pain, but the refusal to let pain define you. Healing, in the end, is cyclical. You will revisit old wounds at deeper levels.
Each return offers a chance to practice compassion instead of criticism. The more you do, the less control those wounds hold.
Eventually, they become part of your wisdom rather than your identity. One of the most profound gifts of high self-esteem is the freedom to love without fear.
You can love others not because they complete you, but because you overflow.
You can offer affection without needing it to be returned in a specific way.
Love becomes an extension of wholeness, not a cure for emptiness. Self-esteem also allows you to engage with the world more authentically. You stop curating a false self to impress others.
You can say, I don't know, I was wrong, or I need help without shame.
Vulnerability becomes strength because it's anchored in self-trust. When you live with this quiet strength, you stop asking, who should I be?
And start asking, what feels true?
Truth replaces performance. And in truth, you find peace. Practically, this might look like changing careers to align with your values, leaving relationships that no longer honor your growth, or finally resting after years of self-neglect. Confidence becomes the courage to choose alignment over approval. Gratitude deepens as well.
You stop thanking life only for blessings and begin thanking it for lessons.
You understand that each difficulty sculpted your character. You stop resenting the path that hurt you, because it also healed you. To live from self-esteem is to live with awareness that you are both the sculptor and the sculpture. Every thought, word, and action shapes your inner form. Each moment of kindness toward yourself is a chisel stroke of beauty. As you move through life, people will notice the difference.
They might not be able to name it, but they'll feel it: the grounded ease, the absence of pretense, the quiet assurance.
Some will be drawn to it, others intimidated by it. Either way, your peace will speak louder than your explanations. One of the greatest tests of self-esteem is how you handle misunderstanding.
When someone misjudges you, can you stay centered? Can you let them keep their version of you without needing to correct it? True confidence is the freedom to be misread without losing your identity. This final evolution of self-esteem is not loud, it's serene. You no longer chase the mirror of the world for reflection. You carry your own mirror within. You recognize that your worth isn't up for debate.
It's an ancient truth, older than achievement, untouched by failure. Deeper than approval. Begin to live life not as a performance, but as a practice. Each day becomes an act of remembering that you are whole,
capable, and deserving of peace. The mind may forget,
but the heart always knows.
And when you finally stop searching for self-worth outside yourself, you realize something simple yet revolutionary: you were never broken.
You were just buried beneath layers of expectation, fear, and comparison. The work was never about becoming someone new. It was about uncovering who you already were. That realization, quiet and complete, is the true science of self-esteem, not a formula to fix yourself,
but a truth to return to again and again until it becomes the ground you walk in.